You got a problem following orders, or is this just something you people do? Officer Ivan Olson hissed as the metal clicked shut over Justin Irwin's wrists. Olson yanked him back from the burning sedan like he was removing a piece of trash from a crime scene. Not a man who had just pulled a mother and her baby out of a car that was still on fire. Justin didn't fight it. He stood straight, shoulders back, jaw set, while 6 phones recorded from the overpass above, and the crowd went completely silent. What Officer Ivan Olson couldn't possibly have known was that the incident wouldn't end Justin Irwin's career. It would end his. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The smoke was the first thing. Black and thick, it rolled up from the I-5 overpass like something alive, twisting against the bright California sky. Justin Irwin saw it before the truck even turned the corner. His stomach tightened the way it always did. Not from fear, but from focus. His body was already shifting into gear before Captain Vasquez finished the radio call. 4-car pileup. Possible entrapments. 1 vehicle on fire. Justin was 42 years old. He had been doing this for 18 years. He knew what that smoke meant. The engine screeched to a stop. Justin was off the truck before the wheels fully settled. Boots hitting the asphalt hard, gear clanking around him. The heat hit him in the face like an open oven door. The smell hit him next. Gasoline, burnt rubber, and something sharper underneath. Something urgent. He scanned the scene fast. A minivan had rolled onto its side near the center divider. Its windshield was spider-Irwined and caved in. A pair of hands were visible through the shattered passenger window, pressing weakly against the glass. Someone alive in there, conscious enough to reach out. To his left, a white sedan was burning. Not just smoking, burning. Orange flames licked up through the hood and crawled toward the door panels. And there, barely visible through the smoke-blackened window, was a woman. Her head was slumped forward. In the back seat, a young child sat strapped into a car seat, her small face turned toward the window, mouth open in a silent scream that the roaring fire swallowed whole. Justin felt everything narrow down to those 3 points. 3 victims. The minivan woman is conscious and stable for now. The sedan woman and the child, they're on fire. He made his call in under 2 seconds. "Jace!" Justin shouted over his shoulder. His partner, Jace Newman, was already pulling equipment off the truck. "Minivan! Woman trapped! Conscious! Go!" Jace nodded once and moved. Justin ran toward the burning sedan. He was aware of people on the overpass railing above. Drivers who had stopped, passengers out of their cars, phones already up and recording. He was aware of the heat getting worse with every step. He was aware of the gasoline pooling under the car, black and shimmering. He was not aware of the LAPD cruiser parked 20 feet back, or the officer leaning against the hood of it, arms folded, watching. Not yet. Justin reached the sedan's door and yanked the handle. Locked. The frame was warped from the impact. He grabbed his Halligan bar, drove the fork into the door seam, and leaned his full weight into it. Metal screamed. The door buckled. One more pull, and it tore open. The smoke that poured out made his eyes sting even through his mask. The woman inside, young, maybe 25, a streak of blood running from her hairline down her cheek, stirred at the rush of air. Her seatbelt had locked tight across her chest, pinning her at an angle. The flames were moving faster now. Justin could hear the fuel line hissing somewhere underneath the chassis. "Ma'am." His voice was calm, firm. "I've got you. Don't move." He cut the seatbelt with one hand and supported her weight with the other. She was limp but breathing. He pulled her free from the seat in one smooth motion, turned his body to shield her from the heat, and carried her away from the car. 10 steps. 15. Far enough. He set her down on the asphalt, away from the gasoline, away from the fire. Then he went back for the car seat. The toddler inside was crying. Loud, furious, full-lunged crying. Justin had never been so glad to hear anything in his life. Crying meant breathing. Crying meant alive. He unclipped the harness, lifted the child out, and walked back to where the mother was lying. The crowd above erupted. Applause and shouts rained down from the railing. Someone was screaming, "Thank you!" over and over. Justin barely heard it. He was already kneeling beside the woman, checking her pulse, checking her airway, checking the child. The little girl had stopped crying. She was staring up at Justin with enormous dark eyes, one fist wrapped around a strap of his gear. "She's okay," he thought. "They're both okay." He exhaled slowly. Just for a second. Just one. That's when he heard the footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Coming from the direction of the police cruiser. Justin looked up. The officer walking toward him was broad-shouldered, mid-30s, with the kind of walk that said he owned whatever ground he was standing on. His jaw was tight. His eyes were flat. He wasn't looking at the burning car or the injured woman or the child. He was looking at Justin. And there was something in his expression that Justin recognized immediately. Something he had seen before, in other places, on other days. It was the look of a man who had already decided he had a problem. The officer's name tag read, Pruitt. Olson stopped 3 feet away. He didn't look at Teresa Ruiz lying on the asphalt. He didn't look at the little girl blinking in Justin's arms. He didn't look at the sedan still smoldering 10 yards behind them, its fuel line hissing like a slow countdown. He looked at Justin. "You need to clear this area," Olson said. "Right now. These vehicles are my scene." Justin kept his eyes on Teresa's breathing. Her chest was rising and falling steadily. Good. He passed the toddler carefully to a bystander who had rushed forward from the railing. A heavy-set man in a construction vest, who took the child with steady hands. Then Justin stood up slowly and turned to face Olson. "Officer." Justin kept his voice even. "Professional. The fuel line on that sedan hasn't been secured yet. Fire isn't fully suppressed. Nobody goes near that car until my crew clears it. That's protocol." Olson's eyes narrowed. "I didn't ask for a lesson. I said clear the area. I understand that, and I will. Once the scene is safe." Justin held his ground. Not aggressively, just firmly. "The way you stand when you know you're right. Give us 10 minutes. Something shifted in Olson's face, a tightening around the jaw, a flatness behind the eyes that had nothing to do with the situation and everything to do with the man. "You don't give me timelines," Olson said. "You don't give me anything. You move when I tell you to move." Justin said nothing. He simply stood between Olson and the burning car. That was his job. That was the only job that mattered right now. Olson took a step to the right, moving to go around him. Justin stepped with him. Same direction. No contact. No aggression. Just a body between a reckless man and a live hazard. Olson stopped. His nostrils flared. "Are you serious right now?" His voice dropped low. Dangerous. "You're really going to stand there and block a police officer?" "I'm standing in front of an unsecured fuel line," Justin said. "You're welcome to wait 30 feet back." The words were calm, reasonable. They were the exact wrong thing to say to a man like Ivan Olson. "Oh, I see." Olson tilted his head. A cold little smile crossed his face. "Big hero. Whole crowd watching, huh?" He glanced up at the overpass railing, at the people pressed against it with their phones out. Then he looked back at Justin, and the smile disappeared completely. "You think I won't drop you right here in front of all of them?" "I think you should step back," Justin said quietly, "and let us finish our job." It happened fast. Faster than anyone watching fully processed in the moment. Olson moved. Not toward the car. Toward Justin. He grabbed Justin's arm at the wrist and yanked him sideways, spinning him hard. Justin's first instinct was to pull away, but he killed it immediately. He knew exactly what resisting would look like on 6 different phone cameras, so he didn't fight it. He let his body turn. The handcuffs came out. 1 click, then 2. Cold metal bit into Justin's wrists, locked tight over the bulk of his rescue gear. The crowd went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that falls when something happens that the brain needs an extra second to believe. Justin stood beside Olson's cruiser, hands cuffed behind his back, still in full firefighting gear. Turnout coat, air pack, helmet hanging at his side. Behind him, the sedan still smoldered. Somewhere to his left, Jace had frozen completely, a hydraulic tool hanging loose in his hand, staring at Justin with an expression caught somewhere between disbelief and fury. Olson straightened his shirt, reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Olson. I've got a combative firefighter detained at the scene. Need a supervisor." Combative. The word landed like a slap. Justin said nothing. He stood straight, shoulders back, eyes forward. He breathed slowly through his nose, the way his father had taught him a long time ago, in a different kind of situation, on a different kind of day. Don't give them the version of you they're looking for. 6 phones were pointed at him. Maybe more. He was aware of all of them. He was aware of Teresa Ruiz being loaded onto a stretcher by paramedics who had just arrived. He was aware of the toddler crying again from somewhere behind him. He was aware of the fuel line that still hadn't been cleared because his crew had stopped to stare. He was aware of all of it. And then he heard tires. A vehicle pulling hard onto the overpass. A door opened. Boots on asphalt. He didn't need to turn around to know the footsteps. He had heard them 100 times on 100 different floors. Captain Eleanor Vasquez had arrived. Vasquez didn't run. That was the first thing Justin noticed. She walked, steady, deliberate, each step measured, from her vehicle toward the cruiser where Justin stood cuffed. Her eyes swept the scene in one practiced pass, the smoldering sedan. Jace frozen with the hydraulic tool, the phones pointing from the railing above. Olson standing with his chest out and his radio in his hand. She took it all in without a word. Then she stopped in front of Olson. "Officer." Her voice was flat and careful. "What is the basis for this detainment?" "Your guy obstructed a law enforcement officer at an active scene," Olson said. He sounded bored, like this was already settled. "Blocked my access, refused direct orders. I have it well within my authority to—" "Noted," Vasquez said. "Just that. 1 word." She turned away from him and pulled out her phone. Olson blinked. "Excuse me, I'm not finished." Vasquez was already dialing. She didn't call dispatch. She didn't call the union line or the department's non-emergency number or any of the official channels that would have put her on hold for 20 minutes and routed her through 3 different offices. She called Fire Chief Jericho Drum's personal cell phone, the number she had been given years ago and had never once used for anything small. She used it now. It rang twice. "Chief," she said, "it's Vasquez, Station 7. I need you at the I-5 overpass at Glendale Avenue, right now." A pause. She listened. "Because one of my firefighters is standing in his rescue gear, with his hands cuffed behind his back, and there are 6 cameras on him." "Yes, sir. That is exactly what I said." She hung up. Olson stared at her. "You think calling your boss is going to change anything?" "Lady, I don't answer to the fire department." Vasquez looked at him for a long moment. The look of a woman who had survived 30 years in a profession that hadn't wanted her, who had outlasted every man who had ever underestimated her, and who had absolutely nothing left to prove to anyone. She said nothing. She walked over and stood next to Justin. They waited. 8 minutes. That was all it took. 2 black SUVs came off the freeway ramp hard and rolled onto the overpass with the kind of authority that parted the rubbernecking traffic like water. They stopped 30 feet from Olson's cruiser. The doors opened. Fire Chief Jericho Drum stepped out first. He was 60 years old. built like a former offensive lineman gone distinguished, with silver at his temples and the quiet bearing of a man who had spent 4 decades walking into burning buildings and walking back out again. He was still in his dress uniform from the press conference. Behind him, City Councilwoman Diane Park stepped out, phone already in her hand. Behind her, a local news crew spilled out of a third vehicle. They had been covering the press conference, had followed the SUVs on instinct, and now a camera was up and rolling before anyone told them to stop. Drum walked directly toward Olson. Not fast, not slow. The walk of a man who has never once needed to hurry to make a point. Olson saw him coming, saw the camera, saw Councilwoman Park already on her phone. The easy confidence on his face flickered once, like a light with a loose connection, and then went carefully blank. Drum stopped 2 feet in front of him. "Son." His voice was low, unhurried. It carried the way a voice does when it has never needed to be raised. "You're going to take those cuffs off my firefighter. Right now." Olson's jaw tightened. For a moment, 3 full seconds that felt much longer. He didn't move. His hand stayed at his side. His eyes cut sideways to the news camera, then back to Drum, then to the crowd pressed against the railing above. Justin could see it happening behind Olson's eyes. The calculation. The desperate, scrambling arithmetic of a man trying to find a version of this situation where he still came out on top. He didn't find one. His chin lifted slightly. One last reflex of defiance. And then something in his posture shifted. Not a collapse. More like a slow leak. His shoulders dropped a fraction. His hand moved to his belt, slow and reluctant, like every inch of the movement cost him something. He pulled out his keys. He stepped around Drum without a word, his face locked into an expression that was working very hard to look like indifference, and not quite getting there. He reached Justin, inserted the key, and released the cuffs with a click that sounded impossibly loud in the sudden quiet. The crowd on the railing above erupted, cheering, shouting, a wave of noise that rolled down from the overpass like something breaking loose. Someone was screaming, "That's right!" Someone else was clapping so hard it echoed. Justin brought his hands forward slowly. He rolled his wrists once, looked down at them for exactly 1 second. Then he looked up. "Thank you, Chief," he said. He turned away from Olson, away from the cameras, away from all of it. He walked back toward the sedan, where the fuel line still needed clearing and the job still needed finishing. Because that was why he was here. Behind him, Ivan Olson stood alone on the hot asphalt, the crowd still buzzing above him, the news camera still rolling, and absolutely no one was looking at him anymore. Amber Darby's kitchen table had seen a lot of fights. Not the kind with raised voices and thrown dishes, the quiet kind. The kind fought with documents and deadlines, and the precise, patient dismantling of powerful people who believed they were untouchable. Her late husband used to say the table had won more cases than any courtroom she'd ever stood in. Justin had eaten dinner at that table as a boy, watching his father and Amber spread papers across it like a battlefield map. It felt exactly the same tonight. Justin sat across from her and told her everything, start to finish. He didn't editorialize, he didn't skip anything. He laid it out the way his father had taught him. Facts first, feelings second, sequence always clear. Amber sat across from him with a legal pad and a pen and didn't interrupt once. When he finished, she set down the pen. "Tell me you have the footage," she said. "3 witnesses sent it to me directly. Jace has his own account written up already. Captain Vasquez has a formal statement ready to attach." Justin slid his phone across the table. "And Alexa Jensen called me an hour ago. She was discharged from the hospital this afternoon." Amber raised an eyebrow. "The minivan victim? She wanted my number from the department's public line. Took her 20 minutes to track it down." Justin paused. She was not happy. Amber almost smiled. She picked up his phone and watched the clearest of the 3 clips without a word. When it finished, she watched it again. Then she set the phone down and folded her hands on top of her legal pad. "This is strong, Justin," she said. "The footage is clear. The witness list is solid. Vasquez's statement alone would be enough to open an investigation." She paused. "File it tomorrow morning. In person. Don't mail it, don't email it. Walk it through the door and get a time-stamped receipt." Justin nodded. "And then," she said, "we wait." They filed the next morning. Justin, Vasquez, and Jace walked into the LAPD Internal Affairs Office on San Fernando Road at 9 a.m. with printed statements, a USB drive containing all 3 video clips, and Amber's cover letter attached to the top of the stack. The officer at the intake desk accepted the packet, stamped the receipt, and told them the standard processing timeline was 4 to 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks. Justin drove back to the station and went to work. 3 days passed. Nothing. A week passed. Nothing. Vasquez called the IA office on a Thursday morning and was told the investigation was ongoing and that they could not discuss active case details. She called again on Friday and was told the same thing by a different person using the exact same words, like they were reading from a card. Justin told himself to be patient. He had seen slow before. Slow didn't mean stopped. Then the phone call came. It was a Tuesday evening. Justin was at his kitchen table paying bills when his cell rang. An LAPD extension. He answered and put it on speaker, grabbing a notepad out of habit. The IA officer on the other end introduced himself as Sergeant Willis. His voice was pleasant and unhurried. He said he was calling to gather some additional information about the incident. Justin said, of course, he was ready. The first question was about his tone during the confrontation with Officer Olson. Had he been agitated? The second was whether he had made any physical contact before Olson applied the restraints. The third was whether he had a history of disagreements with law enforcement at multi-agency scenes. Justin answered every question the same way. Calmly, factually, briefly. When the call ended, he sat very still for a moment. Then he called Amber. She picked up on the second ring. He read her back every question from his notepad, word for word. There was a silence on the other end that lasted just long enough to mean something. "He didn't ask you a single question about Olson," she said. "Not one." Another silence. "Come over," she said. They sat at the kitchen table again, the legal pad between them. Amber walked through it slowly, thinking out loud. The questions weren't investigative. They were preparatory. Someone was building a file. Not on Olson. On Justin. "He has protection somewhere inside that department," Justin said. Amber nodded slowly, tapping her pen against the pad. "Then we need to find out exactly where it is." She looked up at him. "Go home. Get some sleep. I'll start digging in the morning." Justin drove home through the quiet Glendale streets. He watched her porch light through his rearview mirror as he pulled away. Amber didn't go to bed. She went back to the kitchen table, opened her laptop, and typed 2 words into the search bar. Ivan Olson. 2 mornings after the call from Sergeant Willis, Justin was standing at the stove making eggs when he heard the front door. Kate came in from the mailbox the way she always did. Backpack half on, earbuds around her neck, already talking before she was fully through the door. She was 14 and had never once entered a room quietly in her life. Justin loved that about her. "Dad, there's a certified letter. I had to sign for it." She dropped it on the counter beside him without looking at it and opened the refrigerator. "We're out of orange juice again." "I know. There's apple juice in the back." "Apple juice is not orange juice." "That is factually correct," Justin said. Jordan appeared at the bottom of the stairs, 17, already in her school clothes, her mother's eyes in her father's face. She poured herself coffee. She'd started drinking it black this year, a development Justin had not fully accepted, and sat at the counter without a word. Morning, Jordan didn't speak much. That was fine. Justin understood morning quiet. He flipped the eggs. Then he looked at the letter. It was a standard white envelope, But the return address stopped him. Not LAPD. Not Internal Affairs. City of Glendale. Office of Risk Management. He turned off the burner. He picked up the envelope and opened it at the counter, his back half turned to his daughters. He read it once, quickly. Then he read it again, slowly. Because the first time through he was sure he had misread something. He hadn't. The letter cited Justin David Irwin, firefighter, Station 7, Glendale Fire Department, for 2 violations: interference with law enforcement operations and creating an unsafe condition at an active emergency scene. It recommended a 30-day suspension without pay, effective pending the outcome of a formal disciplinary hearing before the fire department's oversight board. A hearing date would be scheduled within 30 days. Justin set the letter face down on the counter. "Eggs are ready," he said. His voice came out completely normal. He was proud of that. He waited until the girls left for school. He stood at the kitchen window and watched Jordan's car back out of the driveway, Kate in the passenger seat already on her phone. And he waited until they turned the corner and disappeared. Then he picked up the letter and called Amber. She answered on the first ring. He read it to her word for word. He didn't editorialize. When he finished, the line was quiet for a moment. "They flipped it," she said. "That's what it looks like. Justin, listen to me carefully." Her voice shifted into the register he recognized from his childhood, the one that meant she was 3 steps ahead and needed him to catch up fast. This letter did not come from nowhere. Risk management doesn't move on active first responders without a push from somewhere. Someone with reach inside that department picked up the phone and made this happen. A pause. This is retaliation, pure and clean. And they were counting on you not recognizing it fast enough to stop it. "They miscounted," Justin said. "They did. But I need you to do something very hard right now." She waited a beat. "Nothing. You say nothing. Not to your crew, not to your neighbors, not to anyone who might say something to someone who says something to a reporter. You come to my office tomorrow morning, and we build this correctly. What about the hearing? We'll file for a delay on procedural grounds. That buys us time." He could hear her already moving, papers shifting. "Can you do that? Can you sit on this until tomorrow?" Justin looked at the letter on the counter. At his father's framed law degree on the wall above the fireplace, visible through the kitchen doorway. Clark David Irwin, attorney at law. 40 years fighting exactly this kind of machine, with exactly this kind of patience. "Yes," Justin said. "I can do that." That evening, Justin sat at the kitchen table while his daughters did homework. The letter lay in front of him, face up now. He didn't hide it. He just didn't explain it. Kate was working through a history assignment with her headphones on. Jordan was reading, feet tucked under her on the couch, unbothered. They didn't know what the letter meant. And he was glad for that. He wanted them to have one more ordinary evening before the ordinary ran out. He looked at his father's law degree for a long time. Clark Irwin had never once let a system like this one have the last word. Not in 40 years. Not ever. Justin picked up the letter, folded it once, and put it in his shirt pocket. "Not quietly," he said softly, to no one in the room. To his father, maybe. Or maybe just to himself. Amber's office light had been on since 5 in the morning. Justin could see it from the parking lot when he pulled in. A warm yellow rectangle in the gray pre-dawn, visible through the gap in the blinds. He had barely slept. He doubted she had slept at all. He knocked twice and let himself in. The desk he remembered as always clear and ordered was buried. Printed records fanned out across the surface in overlapping rows. A departmental org chart had been taped to the wall beside her bookshelf, with names circled in red pen and lines drawn between them in a way that reminded Justin of something you'd see in a detective movie. Except this wasn't a movie. Every circled name was real. Amber stood at the wall with a coffee mug studying it. "Sit down," she said, without turning around. Justin sat. She turned and looked at him the way she used to look at his father when she was about to deliver news that needed to be received carefully. Not gently, just carefully. There was a difference. "Ivan Olson," she said. "What do you know about his family?" Justin shook his head. "Nothing." Amber nodded like that was the expected answer. She moved to her desk and picked up a single printed sheet. A departmental directory, names and titles in small black type. She slid it across the desk and pointed to one line near the top of the page. Olson, Dean L., Deputy Chief, West Bureau, Internal Affairs Oversight. Justin looked at the name. Then he looked up at Amber. "He runs IA Oversight," she said, "for the exact division that received your complaint. Every supervisor in that chain reports to him. The officer who called you, Sergeant Willis, with his charming little questions about your tone, his direct supervisor answers to Dean Olson." She paused. "Ivan is his nephew." The room was very quiet. Justin set the paper down. He breathed through it. He let the shape of it settle. The complaint he had filed, delivered with full documentation and 3 video clips and the signed statement of a fire captain, handed directly into the administrative machinery of the man whose job it was to protect the officer he was complaining about. "They were never going to investigate," Justin said. "They were never going to investigate," Amber confirmed. "And it gets worse." She picked up 2 folders from the left side of her desk and opened them side by side. Inside each one was a complaint form. Different dates, different names, same subject. 2 prior complaints against Ivan Olson, both filed by first responders at multi-agency scenes, one paramedic, one county EMT, within the last 4 years, both logged by IA. Both closed within 60 days with a finding of insufficient evidence. She tapped the first folder. This one, the paramedic's complaint, came with a written witness statement from a second EMT, who was standing 10 feet away when Olson got physical. That statement is in the file. She tapped the second folder. It was never entered into the formal record. Someone pulled it out before the closure was signed. Justin looked at the folders. Who signed the closures? Amber turned and pointed to the org chart on the wall, to one of the circled names. A supervisor 2 levels below Dean Olson, connected by a red line. "Someone who wanted to keep his job," she said. Justin leaned back in his chair. He was quiet for a moment, not because he was lost, but because he was thinking clearly, and needed the space to do it without interrupting himself. "So we have a pattern," he said. "Complaints go in. The right people make sure they go nowhere. And anyone who pushes back gets a letter from risk management recommending a 30-day suspension," Amber said. "Yes." She sat down across from him. She picked up her pen and pulled her legal pad forward. "I'm filing a motion today to delay your disciplinary hearing on procedural grounds. The motion is solid. They moved too fast and skipped 2 required notification steps. That buys us at least 3 weeks." She wrote something at the top of the page. "I'm also filing a public records request for the complete IA file on both prior complaints. They'll stall. They always stall. But stalling creates a paper trail, and paper trails become evidence." Justin nodded slowly. "What do we do with 3 weeks?" Amber looked at him over the top of her reading glasses. "We build something they can't dismantle," she said. "This is bigger than one bad cop, Justin. But bigger means more evidence. And more evidence means they lose." She uncapped her pen. "Now, let's get to work." The following morning, Captain Vasquez was waiting at the station before the day shift arrived. That wasn't unusual. She was always early. What was unusual was the way she was standing when Justin and Jace walked in. Not at her desk, not in the bay checking equipment, but in the middle of the common room with her arms folded and her jaw set, waiting for everyone to be present before she said a single word. When the last man came through the door, she started talking. She told them everything. The letter from risk management, the suspension recommendation, the complaint that had been filed into an IA division run by Ivan Olson's uncle, and had quietly disappeared. She told it the way she told everything. Straight, clean, no softening of the edges. Station 7 was not a crew that needed to be protected from hard news. They were a crew that needed to be trusted with it. When she finished, the room was still. Then one of the younger guys, a 26-year-old named Torres, who had been on the job all of 3 years, said, "So, what do we do?" Vasquez looked at him. "Everything we legally can," she said, "starting right now." Her first call was to the Firefighters Union. She had the regional director on the phone before 9 in the morning, and she did not ease into the conversation. She laid out the facts, cited the procedural violations in the risk management letter, and used the words "coordinated retaliation" twice without blinking. By noon, the union had assigned a labor attorney named Paulo Upton to Justin's case, a compact, fast-talking man in his 50s who had handled 31 disciplinary cases in his career and lost 4 of them. He called Justin that afternoon. His opening line was, "I've read the letter. It's sloppy. They were in a hurry, and hurry makes mistakes. Let's talk." Justin liked him immediately. Vasquez spent the rest of the day making quieter calls to battalion chiefs she knew in neighboring counties, to a state firefighters association contact she'd had for 15 years, to a first responder advocacy group based in Sacramento. She wasn't asking for press statements or public declarations. She was building awareness, laying groundwork, making sure that when the moment came to apply pressure from multiple directions at once, the network was already warm. Jace had been busy on his own. He hadn't told Justin what he was doing, partly because he wasn't sure it would amount to anything, and partly because Jace Newman had always been the kind of man who brought results to the table rather than intentions. He'd spent 3 evenings after shift making phone calls through a network of mutual contacts. Other firefighters, former medics, guys he'd known from his Army days who had moved into emergency services across Southern California. What he found were 2 names. A firefighter in Pasadena named Ruben Castillo, who had a run-in with Olson at a structure fire 18 months ago. Olson had physically removed him from a perimeter Castillo had established for a gas leak, then filed nothing and said nothing when Castillo nearly took it to his captain. And a battalion lieutenant in Burbank named Eddie Miles, older guy, 26 years on the job, who had an incident with Olson at a freeway accident 2 years back that he'd chosen to let go because he didn't want the headache. Neither man had filed a formal complaint. Both were willing to talk now. Jace drove to Pasadena on a Tuesday evening and sat with Ruben Castillo at his kitchen table for an hour. He drove to Burbank on Wednesday afternoon and met Eddie Miles in the parking lot of a diner near the station. He came back to Glendale on Wednesday night with 2 handwritten statements, signed and dated, and dropped them on Amber's desk without fanfare. Amber looked at the statements. Then she looked at Jace. "How long did this take you?" she asked. 3 days, he said. "Good man," she said. On Thursday morning, Justin's cell phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. He answered it and heard a calm, professional voice introduce itself as belonging to a reporter from the Los Angeles Times. He called Amber before the reporter finished her second sentence. Amber's answer was immediate. "No comment, not yet. Tell her you'll be in touch through your attorney." Justin relayed it. The reporter was polite. She said she understood and that the story was running regardless, based on footage already in the public domain. That evening, Justin sat at his kitchen table and pulled up the Los Angeles Times website on his phone. The headline was already there, sitting at the top of the local news section. "Firefighter handcuffed mid-rescue. Witnesses ask why." He read it twice. Then he set his phone face down on the table and sat quietly in the kitchen for a long while, listening to the house settle around him. It had begun. Justin read the LAPD statement 3 times before his coffee went cold. It had been posted to the department's official website at 7 in the morning, distributed to every major local outlet simultaneously, and written in the careful, bloodless language of an institution that had done this many times before. But underneath the careful language, if you knew how to read it, the message was anything but careful. Officer Olson responded appropriately to a combative individual who aggressively blocked access to an active scene and refused direct orders from a law enforcement officer. Officer Olson's actions were consistent with departmental policy and within the full scope of his authority. We stand fully behind Officer Olson's judgment and professionalism. Combative. The word appeared 4 times in 6 paragraphs. Not aggressive. Not resistant. Combative. A word chosen deliberately, Justin knew, the same way you choose a tool, because it did a specific job. It painted a picture. It put something in the reader's mind that the video footage, watched without context, might just barely support if you were already looking for it. He closed the browser and called Amber. "I saw it," she said before he finished his first sentence. "Don't respond. Don't post anything. Don't text anyone who might post anything. They want a reaction. Don't give them one." By noon, the statement had done its work. Social media divided the way it always did, fast, loud, and along lines that had been drawn long before Justin Irwin's name appeared on anyone's screen. The people who believed him completely. The people who didn't never had any intention of it. The comments found Justin anyway. Jordan showed him without meaning to. She had been reading them on her phone at the kitchen counter when he walked in, and the look on her face told him everything before he saw the screen. She tried to close the app. He gently took the phone from her hand. He read for 30 seconds. Then he gave it back. "Don't read those," he said. "They're calling you a liar, Dad." Her voice was tight and controlled in the way of someone who learned composure from watching a parent practice it their whole life, but hadn't quite finished learning yet. "They're saying you went after him. They're saying you've always had a problem with authority. I know what they're saying. How are you not—" She stopped, pressed her lips together. "Angry?" he said. She nodded. Justin sat down at the counter across from her. "I am angry," he said. "I'm very angry. But anger without direction is just noise, and right now we can't afford noise. We need to be surgical." He held her eyes until she nodded once. "Trust Amber. Trust the process we're building. Okay?" Kate appeared in the kitchen doorway, already vibrating. She had clearly been listening from the hall. "I want to post something," she announced. "Absolutely not," Justin and Jordan said at exactly the same moment. That evening, Justin took both girls to dinner. A booth in the back of their usual diner, red vinyl seats, laminated menus they didn't need to read. He ordered the meatloaf. The girls ordered what they always ordered. It was deliberately, consciously normal. He told them the truth. Not everything, but enough. He said there were people who wanted this to go away quietly, and that making it go away quietly meant making Justin go away quietly. And that was not going to happen. Kate said, "So, what are we going to do?" Jordan said, "We're going to win." She said it the way his father used to say it, not boastfully, just as a statement of settled fact. Justin looked at his older daughter for a moment and felt something move through his chest that he didn't have a clean word for. The following morning, Captain Vasquez arrived at work to find a voicemail from Assistant Fire Chief Morris asking her to come upstairs. She came upstairs. Morris was a decent man caught in an indecent position, and he knew she knew it. He didn't look comfortable in his own chair. He told her, in language that was carefully constructed to sound like advice rather than a warning, that she should allow the established processes to work and that her continued personal involvement in the matter was creating complications at levels above his pay grade. Vasquez sat across from him and let him finish. Then she smiled at him. The particular smile of a woman who has been told to sit down and be quiet more times than she can count, and has never once done it. "Understood, sir," she said. "I absolutely will." She went back downstairs, closed her office door, opened her email, and forwarded everything she had. Every note, every contact, every name Jace had surfaced, directly to Amber Darby. Then she went out to the bay and got back to work. Amber called at 7:15 on a Thursday morning. Justin was already awake. He'd been awake since 5, sitting at the kitchen table with his coffee going cold beside him, the way he had a habit of doing lately. He picked up on the first ring. "I'm ready to move," she said. No greeting, no preamble. Just the decisive, forward-leaning energy of a woman who had made up her mind in the middle of the night and spent the remaining hours making sure she was right. Not the hearing, not IA. We're going above all of it. Justin straightened in his chair. "Tell me." "I'm filing a civil rights complaint with the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing this morning. We're citing the arrest, the IA stonewalling, and the retaliatory disciplinary citation as a coordinated pattern of civil rights violations." She paused. "And, simultaneously, I'm filing a public records lawsuit in Superior Court to force immediate disclosure of the full IA file. Both filings, same morning. We hit them from 2 directions at once, and we don't give them time to adjust." Justin was quiet for a moment. "Is the case strong enough?" "Justin." Her voice was patient but firm. "We have footage of the arrest. We have Vasquez's statement. We have Jace's account. We have 2 sworn affidavits from firefighters in neighboring counties establishing a pattern of conduct. We have documented evidence of a suppressed witness statement inside an IA file managed by the subject officer's uncle." She let that sit for exactly 1 second. "Yes, the case is strong enough." "Then let's do it," he said. The filings landed at 9:15 in the morning. By 9:40, the Los Angeles Times reporter who had covered the original story received notification through her legal contacts. By 10, she was on the phone with Amber's office requesting comment. Amber gave her a single prepared statement. 3 sentences, precise and devastating. And nothing else. By noon on Thursday, the story was online. Justin read it at the station on his break, sitting in the cab of the engine where it was quiet. The headline stretched across the top of his phone screen like something that had been building for weeks and had finally broken the surface. Civil rights complaint filed against LAPD over firefighter arrest. Attorney alleges coordinated retaliation. The article was thorough. The reporter had done her work. It named the DFEH filing. It named the public records lawsuit. It laid out the timeline, the arrest, the IA delay, the retaliatory citation, with the clean, factual clarity that made the pattern impossible to dismiss as coincidence. It quoted Amber's statement in full. It did not yet name Dean Olson, but it described in careful and accurate language the structural conflict of interest within the West Bureau's IA oversight process. Justin read it twice. Then he climbed down from the cab and went back to work. By evening, 3 national outlets had picked up the story. And then Alexa Jensen gave her interview. Justin saw it on the news at home, sitting on the couch with his daughters on either side of him. Alexa was in her living room, tidy, bright, bookshelves visible behind her, reading glasses pushed up on her head. She was composed in the way that only people who have genuinely stopped caring about others' opinions of them can be composed. She looked directly at the camera and spoke without notes and without hesitation. She described what she saw from inside the overturned minivan. The fire. The rescue. Justin pulling Teresa Ruiz and her daughter free from a burning car. And then, the handcuffs. "That man was saving my life," she said clearly. "And that officer put him in handcuffs for it. I was a school teacher for 31 years. I know exactly what I saw." The anchor thanked her. Alexa nodded once, as though the interview had simply been a task that needed completing. And it was now complete. Kate, sitting beside Justin, grabbed his arm with both hands and didn't let go. The city council chamber erupted the following morning in a way that made the evening news its own separate story. Councilwoman Park stood at the podium and called for an immediate independent review of both the incident and the IA process with a directness that left no room for procedural deflection. The fire chief's office released a statement of full and unambiguous support for Justin Irwin by 2 in the afternoon. The police commission requested an emergency briefing. That evening, Justin sat in Amber's office while she reviewed the day's developments with the methodical satisfaction of a woman watching a carefully built structure hold exactly the weight she designed it to carry. For one full day, it felt like the worst of it was over. Justin drove home with the windows down and the evening air coming through the car, and for the first time since the afternoon on the overpass, he let himself exhale completely. He should have known better. 2 days after the filings, Justin was at Amber's office. The national attention had changed the temperature of everything. Amber had spent the morning fielding calls from 2 civil rights organizations who wanted to file supporting briefs, and a law professor at UCLA who had written about coordinated IA retaliation and wanted to be useful. Paulo Upton, the union attorney, had sent over an updated filing strategy. The momentum felt real, solid, like ground you could stand on. Justin was at the conference table working through the hearing preparation documents when Amber's assistant, a young woman named Kim, opened the door without knocking. That alone told Justin something was wrong. Kim never opened doors without knocking. She was holding a tablet with both hands. Her face had the particular expression of someone delivering news they wish someone else had been assigned to deliver. "It's on Twitter," she said. "It's moving fast." Amber took the tablet. Justin stood up and looked over her shoulder. The clip was 8 seconds long. Justin recognized it immediately, not because he remembered the recording, but because he remembered the moment. A fundraiser for the county's Emergency Services Association 18 months ago. A heated conversation with a county supervisor named Noel Bright, who had been quietly lobbying to cut the fire department's rescue equipment budget by 30%. Justin had been direct. He had been passionate. He had leaned forward across a cocktail table and used his hands when he talked, and had not smiled once during the entire 3-minute exchange because there was nothing to smile about. 8 seconds of that 3-minute conversation. Stripped of everything before and everything after. Stripped of Supervisor Bright's smug dismissal that had preceded it. Stripped of the budget documents Justin had been holding. Made Justin Irwin look like a man who got in powerful people's faces and didn't stop when asked. The caption beneath the clip read, "Firefighter hailed as hero, has history of confrontational behavior." Amber set the tablet down on the table very carefully, like it was something that might break or something that might bite. "Who posted it?" Justin asked. "A political commentator with 400,000 followers." Kim's voice was steady. "It's already been reposted 1,100 times." By noon, it had been picked up by 3 right-wing media outlets. By 2 in the afternoon, the LAPD's public information officer had released a new statement, brief, measured, and precisely timed. In light of newly surfaced footage documenting a prior incident involving firefighter Irwin, the department notes that Officer Olson may have had reasonable cause to perceive a threat based on the subject's documented pattern of behavior. The department maintains its full support of Officer Olson's conduct. Documented pattern. 2 words. Doing enormous damage. Justin sat in Amber's office and read the statement on his phone and said nothing. Amber was on her laptop. "The clip came from a dashcam archive," she said. "That means someone with access to official footage pulled it, trimmed it, and fed it to a political commentator. That is not a coincidence, and it is not legal." She was already typing. "I'm retaining a forensic video analyst today. I want the metadata, the edit points, the original file length, everything." By 4 in the afternoon, the 2 city council members who had been most publicly vocal in their support of Justin had gone quiet. No statements, no returned calls from the Times reporter. Just silence, which was its own kind of statement. The Times ran a follow-up story that evening, balanced, careful, and hedging in a way the original story had not been. "Questions remain" was in the headline. Justin read those 2 words and felt something shift in his chest. Not despair, something colder than despair. The recognition of a machine operating exactly as designed. Then came the final blow. Amber's phone rang at 6:15. She listened for 45 seconds, said thank you in a voice that meant the opposite, and hung up. She looked at Justin. "The disciplinary hearing has been expedited," she said. "Someone filed an internal order this afternoon. It's been moved up 5 days from now, before the public records lawsuit can produce the IA file." The room was quiet. Justin looked at the conference table covered in preparation documents that had just become insufficient. He looked at Amber, who looked tired in a way he hadn't seen before. Not defeated, but carrying something heavy behind her eyes. "This is what they do when they're scared," she said. "They accelerate." Justin was quiet for a moment. He thought about his father. About 40 years of fighting machines exactly like this one. About the fact that Clark Irwin had never once let the machine set the pace. "Then we accelerate too," Justin said. Amber looked at him. Then she reached for her legal pad. "Start talking," she said. "We have 5 days." Amber's whiteboard had 4 columns. Justin saw it the moment he walked in the next morning at 7. She had been there since before dawn. The coffee pot was already half empty, and there were 2 crumpled legal pad sheets in the trash that told him she'd started over at least twice before she got it right. The whiteboard stood against the wall beside her desk, uncapped markers lined up on the tray below it like soldiers. 4 columns, 4 moves, each one labeled, timed, and assigned. "Sit down," she said. "We have 72 hours and no room for anything that isn't essential." Justin sat. She handed him coffee without being asked. Move 1 took 40 minutes and cost Ivan Olson something he hadn't expected to lose. Amber drafted a formal written demand requiring the disciplinary hearing to be recorded and open to the public under California Government Code Section 520. She cited the statute by number, by subsection, and by the 3 case precedents that had upheld it in similar proceedings. She sent it to the hearing board's administrative coordinator at 7:50 in the morning with a read receipt request and a response deadline of noon. The coordinator called back at 10:15. The board was reviewing the request. Amber told her politely that there was nothing to review. The statute was not a suggestion, and that if the board intended to proceed with a closed session, she would file for an emergency injunction before lunch. The coordinator called back at 11:40. The hearing would be open and recorded. Amber drew a check mark in the first column without looking away from her notepad. Move 2 arrived at the office at 2 in the afternoon in the form of Jace Newman, who appeared in the doorway in his civilian clothes, holding a manila envelope, and wearing the expression of a man who was working very hard not to look pleased with himself. He set the envelope on Amber's desk. Inside were 2 sworn affidavits. Ruben Castillo, from Pasadena. Eddie Miles, from Burbank. Both notarized, both detailed, both describing, in their own words and from their own experience, Ivan Olson's pattern of territorial aggression at multi-agency emergency scenes. Scenes where his authority ended at the yellow tape and he crossed it anyway. Amber read both documents without speaking. When she finished the second one, she set it down and looked at Jace. "These are good," she said. "These are very good." Jace shrugged with the particular modesty of someone who knows exactly how good something is. "Justin would have done it for me," he said. He left. Amber put the affidavits in the hearing folder and drew a check mark in the second column. Move 3 came from a courtroom across town and landed in Amber's email inbox at 4:17 on the second day. The Superior Court judge reviewing the public records lawsuit had issued an emergency order for partial immediate disclosure of the IA file. His written order noted the temporally suspicious relationship between the public records request, the civil rights filing, and the sudden expediting of the disciplinary hearing. He used the phrase appearance of bad faith without quite saying it was bad faith, which was the judicial equivalent of saying it very loudly. The city's attorney had until 8 the following morning to produce the partial disclosure. Amber read the order twice. Then she forwarded it to Paulo Upton, the union attorney, with a single line of text. They blinked. Move 4 was completed at 11:15 at night in a small video production studio in Burbank, where a forensic media analyst named Dave Lim had spent 36 hours working on the dashcam clip. Justin and Amber sat across from him at a monitor while he walked them through his findings. The original recording was 4 minutes and 12 seconds long. The circulated clip was 8 seconds. Lim identified 4 discrete edit points: digital fingerprints left behind in the file's metadata, like footprints in wet concrete. He had recovered enough of the original file structure to establish that the removed footage showed Supervisor Bright speaking first, at length, in a tone the analyst described clinically as elevated. The clip had not been discovered. It had been constructed. Lim produced a 12-page report with time-stamped frame analysis and signed it with his professional credentials. Amber added it to the hearing folder. She drew the 4th checkmark. They drove back to her office in silence. She spread everything across the conference table. 4 moves, all complete, all documented, all ready. She stood at the edge of the table and looked at it for a long moment. "We're ready," she said quietly. Justin looked at the folder with his name on the tab, at the evidence that had been built, piece by piece, from the rubble of what Olson and his uncle had tried to make permanent. "Yes," he said. "We are." The hearing was scheduled for 9 in the morning. Justin arrived at City Hall at 8:15 in his dress uniform, the one he wore to medal ceremonies and funerals, and the occasions that demanded a person show up as the fullest possible version of themselves. The brass buttons were polished. The creases were sharp. He had been up since 5 and had made breakfast for his daughters and driven them to school himself, the way he did when something important was about to happen, and he needed 1 hour of ordinary before it did. The hearing room was on the 3rd floor. He could hear it before he reached the door. Not noise, exactly. More like the low, compressed energy of a space that had more people in it than it was designed for. When he pushed the door open, he stopped for just a moment. The room held 40 seats in the public gallery. Every one of them was filled. People stood along the back wall shoulder to shoulder. The air was warm already, despite the early hour, and carried the particular charge of a crowd that had come with intention. In the front row sat Alexa Jensen. She had brought 14 members of her church congregation, exactly as she had promised. Every single one of them was wearing a yellow and black shirt, Station 7's colors, that they had purchased themselves from a sporting goods store 2 days ago when Alexa had organized it via the church phone tree with the focused efficiency of a woman who had spent 3 decades coordinating field trips and Christmas pageants and was not remotely intimidated by logistics. Alexa herself sat at the center of the row, with her hands folded in her lap and her reading glasses on, looking like she was prepared to grade papers if the proceedings ran slow. Justin caught her eye. She gave him a single, firm nod. He nodded back. Jordan and Kate were in the 3rd row, Jordan sitting straight with her hands clasped, Kate scanning the room with wide, alert eyes. Jace was to their left in his dress uniform, back straight, jaw set, looking like he had been carved from something solid. Captain Vasquez sat in the row directly behind Justin's table, close enough that he could feel her presence the way you feel a fire at your back. Steady heat, reliable warmth. Paulo Upton, the union attorney, was already at the table, his briefcase open, papers sorted into 4 neat stacks. He looked up when Justin sat down and said simply, "Good morning. Let's finish this." Amber took the seat to Justin's left and set her hearing folder on the table with a quiet, final sound. The 3-member hearing board entered at 9 on the dot. They arranged themselves behind the elevated panel at the front of the room with the stiff, deliberate movements of people who had expected a very different kind of morning. The chair, a senior city official named Richard Cross, 60-something, silver-haired, the kind of man whose entire professional life had been spent managing things quietly, surveyed the packed gallery with an expression that moved quickly through surprise, and settled uneasily into something that was trying to look like composure. He had not anticipated Alexa Jensen's church group. He had not anticipated cameras. He had not anticipated any of this. Cross called the hearing to order and laid out the procedural framework in the careful monotone of someone reading from a script. Justin kept his eyes forward and his hands flat on the table. Then Amber stood up. She moved to the center of the room with the unhurried authority of a woman who had stood in harder rooms than this one and had always known exactly where the door was. She opened the hearing folder and began. First, she entered the partial IA file disclosure into the record. Every page of it, including the suppressed paramedic statement and the 2 prior complaint closures bearing the signature of a supervisor who reported to Dean Olson. She read the relevant sections aloud, slowly, clearly, in the voice she used when she wanted every word to land individually. Board member Cross shifted in his chair. The woman to his left wrote something on her notepad. The man to his right had stopped blinking. Then Amber entered the 2 sworn affidavits from Ruben Castillo and Eddie Miles. She summarized each one briefly. Enough for the record, enough for the room. Then she entered Dave Lim's forensic video analysis with his professional credentials and his 12 pages of frame-by-frame findings, demonstrating that the leaked dashcam clip had been deliberately and professionally edited. The room was very quiet. Amber closed the folder. She looked at the board. "The people in this room deserve the truth," she said, "and we've just handed it to you." She sat down. Justin kept his eyes forward. Amber leaned slightly toward him and said, barely above a whisper, "Now, we call Alexa." Alexa Jensen did not hurry. She stood up from the front row, smoothed the front of her yellow and black shirt with both hands, and walked to the witness table at a pace that suggested she had nowhere more important to be, and nothing more pressing to do, and that this was simply the next thing that needed doing, and she intended to do it properly. She sat down. She adjusted her reading glasses. She folded her hands on the table in front of her. The room was so quiet that the air conditioning hummed audibly in the ceiling above them. Board Chair Richard Cross leaned toward his microphone. "Mrs. Jensen, you've been called as a witness to describe what you observed at the scene of the incident on the I-5 overpass on the date in question. Please, in your own words." Alexa looked at him the way she used to look at students who stated the obvious. "That's why I'm here," she said pleasantly. She began. She described the crash the way a person describes something they have replayed so many times it has worn grooves into their memory. Not dramatically, but precisely. The impact, the roll. The moment the minivan came to rest on its side, and the world outside the broken window became smoke and heat, and the distant sound of other people's panic. She described her own condition. A gash on her forearm from the shattered window. 2 cracked ribs from the seatbelt. Her left hip jammed against the door panel in a way that made movement impossible. She described reaching her hands toward the window because she needed someone outside to see that she was alive. Then she described Jace. The first firefighter, the one who came to me, he had his tool out before he reached the van. He was moving fast, but he wasn't frantic. That's the thing people don't understand about people who are good at their jobs. She paused. They move fast, and they stay calm at the same time. He told me his name. He told me what he was going to do before he did it. I've had doctors who didn't give me that courtesy. A small sound moved through the gallery. Not quite a laugh. Something warmer. Then she described Justin. The other firefighter, Firefighter Irwin, he went to the burning car. The one with the woman and the baby. Her voice didn't change pitch or speed. It stayed exactly level. I watched him through the window while I was waiting. I saw him pull that door open. I saw him carry that woman away from a car that was on fire. I saw him go back in for that child. She stopped for one beat. He went back into a burning car for someone else's child. The room was completely still. And then, Alexa said, when both of them were safe on the ground, the police officer put him in handcuffs. Cross shifted forward. Mrs. Jensen, to be precise, did you observe the interaction between Firefighter Irwin and Officer Olson that preceded the— I observed the entire thing, Alexa said, without waiting for him to finish. I had an unobstructed view through the passenger window of the minivan for the duration of the incident. I was stationary, I was conscious, and I was paying attention because there wasn't much else I could do. She looked at Cross steadily. Firefighter Irwin did not raise his voice. He did not make an aggressive movement. He stood in front of that car because standing in front of that car was his job. The officer walked toward the car, the firefighter stepped in his path, and the officer put him in handcuffs. She let that sit for a moment. That is the complete sequence of events. In order. Cross leaned toward his microphone again. And you are certain, given the stress of the situation, the smoke, the noise— Alexa looked at him over her reading glasses with an expression of such patient, absolute certainty that Richard Cross actually stopped mid-sentence. "Young man," she said, "I was a schoolteacher for 31 years. I have been certain about what I see for a very long time." The gallery exhaled into something that was half laugh and half applause before anyone thought to suppress it. Cross raised his hand for order. It took a moment. Amber stood when the room settled. She addressed the board directly and without theater. She laid out the complete picture: the arrest, the IA obstruction, the retaliatory citation, the expedited hearing timeline, and named each piece for what it was. Then she placed her request formally on the record. The disciplinary citation against Justin David Irwin to be dismissed with prejudice, and her intent to proceed with the full civil lawsuit unless the city took immediate and visible corrective action regarding both Officer Ivan Olson and Deputy Chief Dean Olson. She sat down. Justin stared straight ahead. He could feel Vasquez behind him. He could feel his daughters in the third row. He could feel the weight of everything that had been built over the past 3 weeks sitting in that folder on the table in front of him. Board Chair Cross said, "We'll recess." The 3 board members stood and filed out through the side door. The room held its breath. Alexa Jensen folded her hands, settled back in her chair, and waited with the untroubled patience of a woman who already knew how this ended. The side door opened at 9:53. 45 minutes. That was how long the board had been out. Justin knew because he had not looked at his watch once, and somehow knew anyway. The way you know the time when every minute is carrying weight. The room, which had settled into a low murmur during the recess, went silent the moment the door moved. It happened in a wave. The back wall first, then the middle rows, then the front, until by the time Richard Cross and the 2 board members had taken their seats behind the panel, the only sound in the room was the air conditioning and the distant muffled noise of the building existing outside these walls. Cross arranged his papers. He cleared his throat. He began to read. In the matter of the disciplinary citation filed against firefighter Justin David Irwin, Station 7, Glendale Fire Department. Cross paused for a fraction of a second. The way a person pauses when they are about to say something they know will change the temperature of a room. This board finds the citation to be unsupported by the factual record and inconsistent with established departmental protocol. The citation is dismissed. In its entirety. The gallery detonated. It wasn't polite applause. It was the sound of people who had been holding something in for weeks and had just been told they could put it down. Alexa's church group was on their feet. Someone in the back was cheering. Kate grabbed Jordan's arm with both hands, and Jordan, composed, controlled Jordan, who had her father's discipline, pressed her hand over her mouth and closed her eyes. Jay sat perfectly still for exactly 3 seconds. Then he put his face in his hands. Justin closed his eyes. Just for a moment. Just 3 seconds of darkness, and the sound of the room around him. The cheering. The release. The particular noise of justice arriving after you had stopped being sure it would. Then he opened them. Cross was still reading. He had to raise his voice slightly to be heard, and something about that, the board chair of a city disciplinary hearing having to speak over a crowd of people celebrating, felt exactly right. Furthermore, this board recommends the immediate initiation of an independent review of internal affairs oversight procedures within the West Bureau of the Los Angeles Police Department, with particular attention to case closure processes and supervisory chain-of-command conflicts in complaints involving active duty officers. He did not say Dean Olson's name. He didn't need to. Every person in the room who needed to understand, understood. Amber set down her pen on the table with the quiet finality of a period at the end of a very long sentence. She looked at Justin. He looked at her. No words passed between them. None were necessary. Paulo Upton, to Justin's right, closed his briefcase with a clean, decisive click. Outside the building, the consequences moved faster than anyone had predicted. By noon, the police commission had convened an emergency session. The commission, not the department, a distinction that carried its own unmistakable message about where the institutional trust had collapsed, issued a statement at 2 in the afternoon. Deputy Chief Dean Olson was placed on immediate administrative leave, effective that day, pending the outcome of the independent review. His access credentials had already been suspended. His nephew found out through a phone call, not a courtesy visit. Ivan Olson received his formal notice of disciplinary proceedings the following morning. Real proceedings, before a board that had no structural connection to his uncle, reviewing a complaint file that now included 2 reopened prior complaints, the suppressed paramedic statement, and the sworn affidavits from Ruben Castillo and Eddie Miles. The paramedic, whose statement had been buried 3 years ago, received a phone call from a new IA investigator that afternoon. She asked if she was still willing to give her account. She said she had been waiting for that call for 3 years. Councilwoman Park held her press conference at 4 o'clock on the steps of City Hall. She announced the formation of the First Responder Coordination Task Force, a permanent body charged with establishing clear, enforceable jurisdiction protocols at multi-agency emergency scenes across Los Angeles and Glendale. She said Firefighter Justin Irwin would be invited to serve as a founding advisory member. She said his name clearly, into the microphones, in front of the cameras. Justin watched it from Amber's office on her laptop. He watched Councilwoman Park say his name, and he thought about Teresa Ruiz and her daughter. He thought about Alexa Jensen pressing her hands against that broken window. He thought about his father's law degree on the wall at home, and the quiet voice that said not quietly in his own head. The Los Angeles Times posted their story at 5:45. Above the fold, front page. A photograph of Justin in his dress uniform shaking Councilwoman Park's hand on the City Hall steps, taken 90 minutes earlier by the same reporter who had covered the original story, who had followed this from the beginning and had never stopped following it. The headline read, "The Firefighter Who Wouldn't Go Quietly." Justin read it once. Then he looked at Amber across the desk. "Thank you," he said. Amber looked at him over her reading glasses for a long moment. "Your father would have won this too," she said. "But he would have enjoyed watching you do it." 1 week later, Justin drove to work the same way he always did. Same route. Same left turn off Kenneth Road. Same parking spot beside the bay door that everyone knew was his even though it wasn't assigned. He sat in the car for a moment after he turned off the engine, the way he sometimes did on ordinary mornings when he wanted to hold the quiet for one more second before the day began. Then he heard it. Voices. More than there should have been at the start of a regular shift. He could hear Jace's laugh specifically. The full one, not the polite one, booming through the bay door from somewhere inside. Justin got out of the car. They were all there. Not just the day shift, both shifts. People who had no reason to be at the station on a Thursday morning, except that they wanted to be. The common room had been pushed back to make space, and Jace had set up folding tables end to end and covered them with enough food to survive a natural disaster. There was a sheet cake in the center that read, Station 7, in yellow frosting, with a small plastic firefighter helmet pressed into the top corner that had clearly come from a child's birthday party supply pack and was deployed here without any apparent irony. Justin stood in the doorway and looked at all of them. Torres, the young guy, started clapping first. Then everyone joined, and for a moment the bay filled with the kind of noise that had nothing to do with alarms or emergencies. Just people, glad, together, making the specific sound of relief that has been held in too long. Justin raised one hand. He tried to say something and found briefly that he couldn't. Jace filled the gap immediately, because Jace always did. He's speechless, he announced to the room. Write it down. This is historic. That broke it. Justin laughed, and the room laughed with him, and the morning began. 20 minutes in, Captain Vasquez appeared at his elbow and tilted her head toward the hallway. He followed her to her office. She closed the door behind them, which was unusual. She turned and looked at him with an expression he hadn't seen on her face before. Something quieter than her usual directness. Something that had been carefully carried for a while. She reached into her desk drawer and produced a white envelope. This came through official channels 2 days ago, she said. Chief Drum signed off personally. She held it out. I wanted to give it to you here, today. Justin took the envelope and opened it. Inside was a formal departmental citation. Clean letterhead, precise language, the fire chief's signature at the bottom in blue ink. He read the first paragraph and stopped. The department's Medal of Valor. Awarded to firefighter Justin David Irwin, Station 7, for the rescue of Teresa Ruiz and her daughter at the I-5 overpass. The medal ceremony was scheduled for the following month. The citation had been in process since the day of the crash, moving quietly through the proper channels the entire time, undisturbed, while everything else had exploded around it, as if the department had known all along what that afternoon on the overpass actually was, regardless of what anyone tried to make it look like. Justin stood in Vasquez's office and read it twice. The little girl, he said. She's okay? Healthy as a horse, Vasquez said. Her mother called the department last week. She reached back into the desk drawer and produced a second envelope. Smaller. A personal card, not official correspondence. She handed it over without a word. Justin opened it. The handwriting inside was careful and deliberate, each letter formed with the particular attention of someone for whom this communication mattered too much to be hurried. The card was from Teresa Ruiz. You gave my daughter her whole life. There is nothing I can give you that is equal to that. But I wanted you to know. We say your name in this house. Every day. Justin read it once. He folded it carefully along its original crease. He put it in the left breast pocket of his uniform shirt, over his heart, and pressed his hand flat against it for just a moment. Then he walked back to the common room. He didn't see Alexa Jensen until he nearly walked into her. She was standing just inside the bay door, holding a bundt cake with both hands, looking around the room with the expression of a woman who had decided she was invited and was now simply locating the best place to set down her contribution. You're not on the list, Justin said. I don't use lists, Alexa said. She looked around until she found the table and walked toward it with complete authority. Justin followed her. She found a spot for the cake, straightened up, and turned to face him. She took both his hands in hers, not gently, but firmly, the grip of a woman who meant what she said with her whole body. Your father would be proud, she said. Justin looked at her. How did you know about my father? I looked you up. She said it simply. I look everything up. I was a school teacher. Justin laughed. It came from somewhere deep and unguarded. The full, released laugh of a man who had carried something crushing for weeks and had finally, completely, set it down. It filled the room. Jace heard it from across the common room and grinned without knowing why. The way people grin when they hear a sound that tells them everything is genuinely, truly fine. Justin stood in his firehouse with the medal citation in his right pocket and Teresa Ruiz's letter pressed against his heart, surrounded by his crew, his captain, his daughters who had just arrived through the side door with a second cake because they had not coordinated with Jace, and one completely uninvited 68-year-old woman who had brought her own bundt cake and taken over the dessert table. Somewhere across town, Ivan Olson sat in a human resources office under fluorescent lights, waiting to be called into a room he could not leave the same way he entered it. And in a downtown office building, a man named Dean Olson was cleaning out his desk. Justice didn't always arrive loudly, but when it arrived completely, when it filled every corner of the room and left nothing dark untouched, it felt exactly like this. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.